In the year 1880, there were 41,000 people in the United States living in mental asylums. And over the next 10 years, an additional 33,000 people would be admitted. And for many, the road to an asylum began in places that look just like this. Howdy folks, my name is Will, and for the last 2.5 years, I've been recreating the life of an early Oklahoma homesteader. Now, I'm normally really excited to film the next video, but it's been so hot and humid here that it's driving me crazy. So I thought it was only fitting that for this week, I make a video about Prairie Madness. Also known as prairie fever, it's a condition that claimed thousands of pioneer settlers. Now, Prairie Madness and prairie fever aren't formal medical diagnoses, but rather historical terms used to describe the emotional and psychological suffering that broke many people. And I understand. Generally, when I'm sitting here doing my business, I'm looking out at everything I've built and I see life everywhere. I see changes in seasons, flowers, weather patterns, sunsets, songbirds, and the potential for new, exciting projects and adventures. But life has a way of beating you down sometimes. At times, you're going to see staleness, emptiness, weeds, pesky insects, no neighbors, no news. And with so many projects that need getting done, you can feel like you're in a prison of your own making. And if you stay in that mindset for too long, it'll have detrimental effects on your psyche. Okay, hold on. Sometimes my curiosity gets the better of me. This may be one of those times. Okay. Planking used to be a big thing. Oh man. Ooh. Okay. That's okay. Where were we? Prairie Madness. Symptoms. Ow. I don't have my notes on me. Is there a narrator that could help me out here?
I'd love to take over for you, Rustic Joe.
Great, yes. My name is Will, but what are the symptoms of Prairie Madness?
Common symptoms of Prairie Madness included depression, withdrawal, hopelessness, personality changes, sudden acts of violence, uncontrollable weeping or laughter, and some hallucination. Prairie Madness drove some to simply wander off into the wilderness, never to be seen again, and others to shut down and abandon claims after years of work to never speak of it again.
Good job, narrator. Okay, that wasn't bad. Now, the question is, how could living here be so bad that it put thousands of people in asylums? And I think this is an important question to answer because these were not weak people. These were brave and courageous individuals who risked everything in order to build a life from nothing. One of the biggest contributors to Prairie Madness was the isolation. Everyone knows what it's like to feel lonely. You can be surrounded by people and emotionally feel alone. But when you live on the prairie, the loneliness is not just emotional. It's structural. It's unavoidable. You could leave your homestead and go find people. But a working homestead will have crops, gardens, and many animals to attend to. There's constant maintenance and preparing for winter. These are difficult things to just drop. This is Oklahoma in the 1890s. Well, technically, this is the Oklahoma Territory in the 1890s. And from where I am now to the nearest town of Purcell, Oklahoma, would have been a 3 or 4 day excursion by covered wagon. Without someone here to watch over everything, you're liable to lose a lot of progress. A normal homestead could lose chickens to bobcats, and armadillos will get into the garden. There's plenty of chores that won't get done. You can't just let go of everything because you feel lonely.
This is where women were hit especially hard, because someone has to stay home, and it was more likely that the men would go into town and have some more human interaction. Immigrants were hit hard too. Norwegian, German, and Czech immigrant families had Prairie Madness compounded. They couldn't speak to their American neighbors even when neighbors existed. They'd come from tight-knit European villages, everything familiar stripped away at once. Language, community, landscape, culture, and family.
The pioneers endured an incredible amount of hardship. let's talk about some of the things I've experienced while I've been out here. I've been out here on some very hot days and some very cold days, and even ignoring those extremes, I'm very rarely comfortable. Actually, no, I'm never comfortable while I'm out here. My back is considerably older than it was just 2 years ago. I've hauled hundreds of 50-pound sod bricks, chopped down and hauled hundreds of trees, hauled thousands of buckets of water. There's probably a ton of sod that I've tossed up on the roof, chopped a ton of wood, plowed a field by hand. Building all of this has been an incredible physical toll. I've developed some type of a skin allergy to the grasses here, and I itch constantly. There's also no way to get clean. On top of all that, I've experienced a lot of failures. Last year, my apple trees died, potatoes died, onions died. Last year's corn never grew past 5 inches, the wheat did terrible, and the back wall of my cabin sunk 10 inches, and all of that happened in just a 2-month period. It's easy for me to look at my failures as learning experiences because, let's face it, when my crops fail, I'm in no danger of starving to death. But for the settlers who did this for real when their crops failed, they had some tough decisions to make ahead of them. So let's talk about uncertainty and an impossible decision that I had to make recently. A few months ago, I dug all of these mounds and planted corn. Over the next 2 weeks, as everything began to sprout, crows came in and ate all of the sprouts, causing me to replant now late in the season. I missed all the good April rain, and in May and June it seemed like every rainstorm missed me entirely, so I had to water everything every few days from my cistern. I watched my water supply go down further and further. So this is very stressful, because this cistern works by collecting rainwater from off the hill, and I was worried that if I continue to water the crops, I will run out of water before the summer drought months even begin. So what do you do? Because there's no guarantee that even if I used up all the water, that the crops would be successful. So there is a scenario out there where I go into the drought months with no water and no food. While I've been out here, I've had to make a lot of blind decisions like that, where there is a correct answer, but I just don't have the information to make the best decision possible. It's very stressful.
If you're wondering what happened with the decision he had to make, Rustic Joe did choose to continue to water the crops by hand, depleting his water supply, but he got lucky with rain recently, so the cistern is now full again. However, his 100 squash plants have died. 148 of 150 pole bean plants have also died. And there's only a couple ears of corn that might be good enough for grinding into cornmeal. The failure of his crops is likely attributed to the heat stress the plants have been under. And if it's the case where he only gets a few ears of corn, then this year's crops will also have been a failure.
If you've ever failed at anything, hit that like and subscribe button. When talking about Prairie Madness, I've never heard anyone talk about sound, and sound is absolutely a psychological weapon.
In 2022, a study was done on sounds that compared recordings from Great Plains prairies against urban soundscapes. Their finding was that, in a city, you stop hearing traffic because your brain learns to ignore it. On the prairie, there was so little ambient sound, and every sound that there is hits the sensitive mid-range of human hearing with full force. Settlers couldn't tune it out. As auditory brain scientist Adrian Casey Lee described it, being adaptive is really for survival. If you adapt to a very low sound environment and all of a sudden there's a loud sound coming on, of course it's going to give you trouble.
Did you hear that? I heard them. Where are they? They're all around me. They're all around me! Right now, I can hear a singular termite eating my workshop. I spent so much time building this. I chopped down and hauled 100 trees to build this, and I can hear a termite eating. he's going to eat and breed and eat and breed and eat and breed and eat and breed and eat and breed. Ugh. While I was filming that, I heard something else, and it was that mouse. Let's see if there's... And there are other sounds as well. There are grasshoppers who, when in the grass and making noise, sound like rattlesnake rattles. There are paper wasps flying around. There are mud wasps flying around. And these holes are from wasps burrowing into the side of my sod walls. And on these hot summer days, I'm all sweaty. The flies are attracted to me. The mosquitoes are attracted to me. They're all just buzzing around my face. And it just drives me a little crazy. And it doesn't get any better at night. At night, I can hear the raccoons scratching the outside of the walls, digging for insects. Mice scurrying around. They pee on my tablecloth. Mornings are pretty silent except for the creaks in the cabin and the sounds of newly hatched flies buzzing and pounding themselves into the windows trying to get out to the light. And then there is the wind. The relentless, disorienting wind. In Oklahoma, the wind is like a small child who wants your attention. And he's just poking you. Hey, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. It will drive you crazy. And then there's days like today, where there is absolutely zero wind. There's no breeze. No air is moving. I feel like the air that I'm exhaling just comes out and just lingers in this one spot. And it makes being in this cabin unbearable. And there's this eerie feeling. To go from, wind, constant wind, to no wind, it gives you this eerie feeling of, did I leave the stove on? Am I going to burn my house down? This feeling that something is wrong and you can't quite place it. That is what it's like to have zero air movement. The wind in the winter is the most miserable, but the wind during a summer storm is the most terrifying. There have been 2 storms in the last month with wind over 80 miles per hour. At that speed, the wind comes through all the little cracks and crevices in the cabin, and it blows dust everywhere. The shutters bang against the windows like thunder, and you wonder if there's a tornado outside about to rip off the roof and bury you alive. So far, we've talked about hardships, failure, uncertainty, and the many irritations of frontier life. But there's another burden that many settlers had to endure, and that's grief. Perhaps one of the most painful things a person can experience is the loss of a child.
In the late 1800s, between 10 and 20% of children died before their first birthday, and roughly 15 to 25% did not live to see their 5th birthday. On the frontier, where disease, isolation, and harsh conditions made survival even more difficult, those numbers could climb even higher. And it's important to keep in mind that large families were common. Most couples had 5 to 8 children, and families of 8 to 12 were not unusual.
For many people, the hardest thing they had to do on the frontier was to bury a child. And statistically, as a parent, you were going to bury at least one of your children before they turned 5. A heartbreaking reality of life on the frontier.
For many settlers, the dream of a new life on the prairie never became reality. Historians estimate that 40 to 60% of homesteaders eventually abandoned their claims, unable to overcome the combination of constant hardships and struggles. Some left after only a few months. Others endured for years, fighting through hardship after hardship, before finally reaching the point where they had nothing left to give. And for some, the combination of isolation, grief, and unending hardship became more than the human mind could endure, leading to what many at the time called Prairie Madness.
Grit is not infinite. We all have a breaking point. We're all human.
Prairie Madness virtually vanished from the historical record in the early 20th century. Not because people got tougher, not because medicine improved. It ended when the railroad expanded, the telephone arrived, and communities thickened. Historian Frederick Jackson Turner described this as the closing of the frontier. As the land filled in with people, the psychological toll lifted. The moment people could reach each other, the madness receded.
That was a nice touch, Mr. Narrator. You did a good job. You know, what if you and I got together and we made a feature-length documentary about my 2.5-year journey out here?
We could make it like the Dick Proenneke documentary.
I love that documentary, and we can fill this with historical information, and I can better explain some of the situations and decisions I had to make. You know, this might be the start of a beautiful friendship. But don't you worry, my normal no-talking videos will continue. I know how much you like them. Okay, one more thing. So, there is regarding the topic of this video, there is a verse in the Bible that is commonly misinterpreted, and that's Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Now, based on just that singular verse, it would sound like you can achieve anything that you want to achieve with Christ behind you. But what this verse is actually talking about, when you read the verses before and after it, you realize Paul, who was in prison when he wrote this, he's actually talking about being content and enduring your present circumstances through faith in Christ. You know, you can get through any hardship by following Christ. And the historical record is pretty clear that those on the western frontier who were a part of a religious community had measurably better psychological survival rates. So, all of that to say that if you are going through your own Prairie Madness right now, consider picking up a Bible or walking into church. Just an idea.